She was a big personality. Everyone loved her.
She was an inspiration to people. She was my rock.
She touched lives. I was proud of her.
Until it all came to a tragic end.
I saw the door open, the woman get thrown out.
She was shot.
I was devastated. I was in shock.
Everything just kind of went blank.
This can't be happening. Not one of mine.
Her death leaves the community desperate for answers.
Was this a hate crime?
My sisters die on a daily basis.
But can police bring her killer to justice?
You want to go for a ride?
He's portraying himself as a good Samaritan. But what's the story here? There's definitely more to it.
I was angry. I was furious.
They got in my car and they wouldn't get out. This individual that appeared to be female, when they spoke, was a male.
It's always the gay panic defense.
December 7th, 2018. Detroit, Michigan. Once a powerhouse of American industry, the Motor City is struggling to reinvent itself.
Detroit's a great town, but it's a gritty town. And we've experienced some very serious housing and economic crises. So it's really been trying to bounce back from all of that.
Detroit is making a comeback. Our city is on the up and coming.
But every reinvention has setbacks. Early that Friday morning, Detroit 911 receives an urgent call from the vicinity of Palmer Park.
Palmer Park is a historical park in the city of Detroit, located in the University District.
The Palmer Park area in the night can be a little bit of a sketchy place.
This woman needs help.
The caller says there was a woman lying in the street.
I think she's hurt. Just get somebody out here.
It was approximately 5:55 in the morning.
Police are on the scene within minutes.
My victim was laying on the ground, face up, on the corner.
She was grasping what appeared to be a metal spike or like a piece of scissors.
And she's bleeding from what appears to be a single gunshot wound.
It was her left side right here, like in the armpit area.
She's gone.
The individual was deceased on scene.
According to the ID, the police find in the purse, the dead woman's name is Kelly Stowe.
"36-year-old Kelly Stowe always had a strong sense of self."
Kelly was a force to be reckoned with.
She had her own thoughts, her own mind, but she was very special.
Not only was she beautiful and poised, but she was also generous, kind, loving, supportive. The community loved her.
But it had taken determination to get there.
Kelly wasn't born a woman.
He was born Tristan. He was a grandma's baby, the light of everybody's life, spoiled rotten.
We're a small family, but we love strong. And we're there, for each other, because we realize that we're all we have.
And even from a young age, everyone realized that Tristan was different.
The earliest I remember, I know like at 7, she would come home and, be crying, kids teasing her. I didn't really realize how much it affected me, but it was like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. God don't make no mistakes.
Throughout high school, Tristan struggled to fit in.
She got into sports. She started off with track. She did pretty good. Then she got into football, and me and her dad made her stay with football. She hated it. We found out years later she hated football, but she stayed with it.
She was well known for her athleticism.
She got a partial scholarship to college and everything.
But her heart was never truly in it.
It was rough in college. She ended up doing 2 years and then decided to come home.
And when she came home, she finally started to embrace her true self.
We talked about careers, what you want to do. So she was always in fashion and makeup and things of that nature. So we found the International Institute for Design and Technology. She enrolled there. It was like, oh gosh, she finally found a school where she felt like she fit in. Thank God. From there, she just flourished.
That's where she really found herself.
It was then that Tristan became Kelly.
She was like, Mother, when I'm a woman, I feel empowered. I feel strong. I feel beautiful. And it was like, wow. I respect and love her for the fact that she accepted her truth.
Nobody should hold nothing in if it's detrimental. Just be happy and live, you know?
But it was when Kelly discovered the world of ballroom that she really found a home.
The ballroom scene started in New York, where the Black and Latino community decided to come together and put on their own pageants and their own celebrations of who they are and their identities, and created a space that was just for them.
When we were watching TV and saw people at BET Awards and walking on the red carpets, in our minds, we knew that we won't be able to do that. So we created our own space where we awarded ourselves and gave ourselves praise. So that's why it's important. It's ours.
When it came to the ballroom scene, Kelly came alive. People could recognize her from a mile away. 6'4" stature, beautiful, confident.
She was a winner. When she stepped on the floor, she won. And if she didn't win, like, you knew she was there.
But Kelly was more than just a fierce competitor.
Girl, try this one on too. Stop playing.
She was also a role model.
I didn't know how to do hair and makeup when I was younger, so of course she taught me.
This is a good braid of hair. What kind of braid is this, honey?
She did my hair. She dressed me.
She gave me the motivation. She let me know that I could do it.
She was my rock. She was my big sister, but she also was my mentor.
But now, the special woman who commanded the ballroom floor lies dead on a Detroit street corner.
She succumbed to a gunshot wound. Other than her personal effects, there was one spent shell casing.
And while Kelly died clutching half of a pair of scissors in her hand, there is no sign of a gun.
It's definitely a homicide.
But could it be more than that?
We've got one female deceased. Can you go ahead and start major crimes in the ME?
A transgender woman had been murdered.
It is so dangerous for them just to be who they are.
Was this a hate crime?
After leaving her old life behind, Kelly Stowe had gone on to shine in the world of ballroom.
She loved it. That seemed to bring her a lot of joy.
It is the best thing in the world when you are finally able to be your authentic self.
We have these good hoochie mama dresses.
She was bold, beautiful, and funny, and intelligent. She was warm, and everyone loved her because she always had a loving smile on her face. She was a big personality.
And she was a role model to those around her.
When people are not afraid to be their authentic selves and be out there, that starts to break down barriers.
She felt comfortable living her own life and her own truth.
But now Kelly's life has come to a sudden, violent end.
She is dead on a Detroit street corner, killed by a single gunshot wound.
So investigators really needed to know if Kelly was the target of a hate crime.
A hate crime is anytime you intentionally assault somebody just because of their sexual orientation, their social status, their religion, their ethnicity.
A lot of people take for granted the little things that are really unsafe for my community. It's not safe for every trans person to take the bus or go to the gas station to get a pack of cigarettes. The daily things that we take for granted are some of the reasons as to why my sisters die on a daily basis.
Living this lifestyle, we have lost a lot of people, and it puts you in a scary place.
It's being normalized. Killing trans women.
For the moment, the detectives aren't sure what motivated the murder, or if Kelly was even shot on the street corner.
This could have been someone that's dumped out of a vehicle. This could have been an old spent shell casing.
However, since the victim is trans, the detectives have to take that into account.
At the onset of any investigation, you have to follow the evidence, right?
And based on where they found Kelly, the detectives have reason to believe the crime could be motivated by anti-trans prejudice.
Trans women of color, particularly, congregate in the 6 Mile and Woodward area, which is Palmer Park area in Detroit. It's been like that for quite a while. There is an LGBT center there.
It's the only place in the city that will take them in. No homeless shelter will take in a trans person in the city because most of them are faith-based. So there's just no support system for this community.
To survive, many turn to sex work.
When I was younger, I was doing sex work, survival sex work. I didn't like it. I don't like it. It's very dark, creepy, scary. If you're there, know that you feel in your mind there's no other choice.
Nobody in their right mind wakes up and says, this is what I want to do for a living. They don't have any other option to have the things that they need in order to survive, whatever that is, whether that's food, whether that's access to hormones, medication, a roof over their head, a phone to be able to call their loved ones.
The detectives suspect sex work could explain why they found Kelly's body near Palmer Park.
It has been historically a place where you find prostitution.
If someone is looking for a target, if they're looking to murder a transgender woman, the Palmer Park area would be the perfect place to do that.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that her death was a result of a hate crime.
Hoping for insight, detectives start knocking on doors around the park.
They're looking for more witnesses, right? People who were in maybe the park area, but it seems like nobody saw anything.
A lot of times, the community doesn't want to step forward. A lot of times, it's mistrust of the police. They don't want to be targeted themselves or retaliated against. We can do what we can, but they still have to live in that community at the end of the day.
However, the canvas does produce one thing that could be useful.
There was a church across the street that had video.
But before the detectives can get a copy of the video, 911 dispatch gets another urgent call.
The call came in about 6:30 in the morning.
I'd like to report a shooting.
It's coming from a gentleman who says that he experienced a robbery in the area earlier that morning.
They got in my car. They wouldn't get out. Give me your money, get out.
He said that he had to shoot them.
Detectives investigating the shooting that killed Kelly Stowe have just been informed that dispatch received a 911 call from a man who says he may be responsible.
He said that he was driving early morning on his way to work and got flagged down by someone right outside of Palmer Park.
It looks like she was in distress. I slowed down to see if she needed any help.
The caller, 46-year-old Albert Weathers, says he'd stopped to see if she needed assistance.
We learned that he was a pastor of a church in Sterling Heights.
He does also say that he was a form of law enforcement because he was an armed guard at the Water Authority. So he had a little bit of training.
You okay, ma'am? Oh, God, I didn't think you stopped.
He said that he was surprised when she had a low voice, like a man.
But he says it's what happened next that really took him by surprise.
Give me your money.
The woman attempted to get in the car and rob him.
She pulled something out of her purse. It looked like a knife.
Give me your money. Get out.
He says that he'd instinctively gone for his gun.
In addition to being a security guard, he has a concealed carry permit.
Out now! It just happened so fast.
He said that he was aware that the gun went off. He didn't know if he had shot the person.
I wasn't even aiming at her.
He said she fell back out of the car, he yanked the door closed, and then drove off.
You scared me to death.
He said it wasn't until he calmed down and started thinking straight that he called 911.
When the detectives return to the precinct to reach out to Albert, he agrees to come in and give them a statement.
He wasn't too hesitant about telling his story.
Thank you.
While they wait for him to arrive, word of Kelly's death spreads through Detroit's tight-knit trans community.
In our community, news travels fast. Like, I found out immediately.
When I got that call, I was devastated. I was in shock because I literally talked to her a couple days before.
The news also reaches Kelly's family.
A friend of hers had called, and she said, well, on the news, they had this story that a trans woman was killed, and I think it was Kelly.
I guess everything just kind of went blank for a little while because I couldn't just get that together. You know, she's dead.
I was just like, this can't be happening. Not one of mine. You know, that happens to other people.
While Kelly's family reels from the news of her death, Albert arrives at the station to give his formal statement.
He appeared to be very forthcoming.
I'm just, still shaken up by the situation.
Yes, sir.
He starts the interview by telling the detective what happened that morning.
He told us that he was on the way to work and realized that he didn't have enough gas.
I needed, to stop at the gas station.
He went to a gas station that he was familiar with in the area and comes to the intersection of Brush and 6 Mile. That's when an individual on the corner waved her hands like this, as if they were in distress and needed help.
And so as I raised the window down, that individual unlocked my door and proceeded to get in my vehicle.
When asked what happened next, he said this individual immediately requested money from him.
And that's when this individual that appeared to be female, but when they spoke, was a male voice.
I'm trying to help you.
He stated he refused to give money and requested that she exit his vehicle.
And from what he said, she wouldn't get out.
Albert says that's when Kelly had pulled something from her bag.
Something metal. It was metal.
He cross-drew his firearm, instructed Kelly to exit his vehicle again.
You gonna pull a gun? And actually, instead of being scared by the pistol, the woman actually just started yelling.
And then they kind of was coming toward me. That's when the gun went off.
He stated that she collapsed to the ground and he closed his door.
He drove away and went to work.
You called the police when you got to your job?
Not when I got there, no.
He explained that he was all riled up and needed to calm down before he called the police.
He spoke articulate. He was to the point. He dialed in on this conversation when he spoke to you to make sure you understood.
He was portraying himself as a good Samaritan when he was met with not only a hostile person, but with the threat of being robbed.
But the detective can't help but wonder if Albert is telling the whole story.
So he just happens to stop and help a transgender woman in an area that's known for prostitution?
People going to this area, they know what they're looking for.
After taking Albert's statement, the detectives do a little digging into the alleged Good Samaritan.
He has no record. Everything is clean.
He was a family man. He was an upstanding citizen, a husband, a father, all the things that you think a pastor should be.
And they were able to find the conceal and carry license that he claimed to have.
The detectives also look into Kelly's criminal history.
Kelly didn't have much of a record either.
There's certainly nothing to suggest that she would have attempted robbery.
What's the story here? There's definitely more to it.
Hoping to find out, the detective's next move is to follow up with the man who made the original 911 call.
He didn't see the actual shooting or heard the shooting, but he saw a man push a woman out of a car.
And as it turns out, that's not all he saw.
Then some man got off the driver's side, snatched the phone out of her hand.
911.
And he tells police he's just been passing through the area on his way to work that morning.
I got the music go upstairs, and all of a sudden, it would caught my eye with somebody being thrown outside.
He didn't hear any gunshots, and he also didn't see any arguing.
The car said stopped, and there's a headlights in me. I saw the door open, the woman get thrown out.
He could tell that the woman had a phone in her hand. He could see the light from the screen.
Then the witness says he saw a man get out of the driver's side of the car and cross to the woman on the pavement.
They snatched the phone out of her hand, and they got back in the car.
They then leave heading towards 75 area, which would be east of that location.
You said you saw him walk around the curb? Where?
After the man drove away, he saw the woman on the street, and it was clear that she was in pain.
He says he then drove slowly past the woman to check on her.
I could tell they were moving, like wincing. So that's told me to call the emergency police to get somebody over there.
Yeah, there's a woman that needs help.
But he had no idea she'd been shot.
Did you hear any gunfire?
No weapons. Like I said, I couldn't tell since she was moving, so I didn't see anything done to her.
Did you see him assault her or assault him at all? Any kind?
Just nobody else in the vehicle. None that I can tell. I just know from the passenger side, she was thrown from the car.
Parts of what the witness says fits with what Albert has already told detectives.
He said that he shot her, and he kind of just let her drop out the car.
But the witness also saw things Albert hadn't mentioned.
Albert never said anything about Kelly having the phone.
So now we have two stories happening.
There may be a way for detectives to uncover the truth.
During the initial canvass, detectives noted that there was a church nearby that had cameras that covered the area where the incident had occurred.
I had one of our video people extract the video from the church.
The video is grainy, but it does show Albert's car pulling into frame.
It was dark, but you could clearly see that the car stops, and you can see the dome light coming on in the car, and you can see there's some sort of communication going on in the vehicle because it's just sitting there.
Then a moment later, a man does get out of the driver's side.
It's very grainy video, but you do see that he then approaches the passenger side. You see a muzzle flash.
Could that be the supposed phone light that the witness saw?
Kelly's essentially dumped out of the car, left in the street, and he goes back around, gets into the driver's side, and pulls off.
However, while the video doesn't quite match the eyewitness statement, it doesn't confirm Albert's account either.
Mr. Weather stated that a woman flagged him down as if she needed help at that corner.
But in the video, Kelly was already in the car when Albert pulled up to the corner.
Which makes me believe that he picked her up at a different location.
The video also provides a possible clue about where Albert picked up Kelly.
The video was very grainy. It was dark, but you could most certainly see the car actually came from the street that ran perpendicular to 6 Mile.
They're coming from the direction of the nearby LGBT center.
A lot of trans people go there that experience homelessness, that need non-perishable items, a food box, and different resources.
Detectives suspect someone at the shelter could know more about Kelly's death, if they're willing to talk.
The trans community, for good reason, has in the past not really trusted law enforcement.
Sometimes they're sex workers. They don't want to deal with the police.
Right this way.
But this time, the detectives are approached by someone from the trans community who is more than willing to talk.
They really had decided that they had had enough.
I came forward out of rage. I just was thinking about my friend.
She is a survival sex worker, and she knows Kelly.
And she also knows Albert.
You want to go for a ride?
I just knew, like, this is the person that did it. This is the person who killed my friend.
She said it wasn't a robbery. This was on purpose.
Approached by a woman named Bridget, who says she knows Albert Weathers, the man who admitted to shooting Kelly in self-defense.
He picked me up from time to time.
I was really scared for my life, but I also knew that somebody had to speak up.
She has known Mr. Weathers for a long time.
Yeah. I had known him before I even hit the age of 20, and I'm 35 now.
And Bridget says Albert is no stranger to the women that work that area of Detroit.
He comes to the Palmer Park area and picks up prostitutes.
Albert was a client?
Not for a while, but yeah.
Why not for a while?
It just wasn't worth it.
My experience with him was negative.
There was always a conflict at the end of any of the sex work.
Whatever they agreed to, we wanted to change the price of the services.
I walked away a lot of times from him with no money.
She also tells police that Albert's behavior is aggressive.
It's like he was living a double life. I never would have thought he was a pastor. I never would have thought he had a family and a wife. He was very manipulative and verbally abusive. Like, he was a monster.
So you saw Albert pick up Kelly before?
Yeah. She had been on dates with him. I won't be able to say how many, but I knew that she was familiar with him.
That just changed everything and completely blew his story out of the water.
Well, we'll be in touch.
I'll see you out.
After talking to Bridget, the detectives turn back to Albert.
He sticks to his story at first.
Well, I already told you. I saw her on the corner.
What if I told you that we had evidence that you're lying?
What evidence?
I explained we have video. The video was grainy, but it showed that no one was walking in that area at that corner.
Okay. I picked her up. We had an argument. But I didn't mean to kill her.
He said he pulled the trigger by mistake.
I just wanted her out of my car.
Why don't you just call 911?
I was scared.
Scared of what?
Jesus, I'm stronger now. I'm wiser. I'm much better.
He's a pastor, and he didn't know how this was going to be perceived, that he was picking up a trans woman for sex.
As long as we continue to villainize trans women, we're going to continue to be murdered. We're going to continue to have higher rates of domestic violence because of the social stigma. The reality is a lot of them rather love us in private and kill us in public than have anybody know of their association with us.
But while social pressures and prejudice created the circumstances that led to Kelly's death, it was Albert who pulled the trigger.
I think that it had more so to do with
Get out. Where's the rest of it?
Mr. Weathers not willing to pay for some service.
Where's the rest of my money at? Stop playing with the rest of my money that you owe me. You got the right one today.
I'm not gonna say it was premeditated, but I just felt like he already was ready for this type of situation.
I don't know what you walking over here for. I'm not going nowhere. You're gonna give me the rest of my money. Out.
He pulled the trigger and shot her one time. And then he just left and went to work, like a normal day.
The way that he left her in the street and drove away, it's sickening.
I don't think he saw us as people. I think he saw us as a lot of people do, a fetish.
It became pretty clear that he wasn't the upstanding pastor and father and husband that he had claimed to be.
Miss Albert, stand up.
After the interview, the detectives charge Albert with the murder of Kelly Stowe.
I was like, thank God. I don't have to go through life wondering who did this and why.
I was relieved, but I was more relieved that he wouldn't hurt nobody else, so to speak, because there's a lot of young trans ladies down there.
I was excited, but I also was anxious to know what was the next step.
The prosecutors were just as anxious.
At the time, I was a prosecutor in Wayne County and working in the homicide division. So Prosecutor Worthy and Dana Nessel, who is now our Attorney General, put together the Fair Michigan Justice Project. They asked if I would come in to prosecute, to start tackling the violence in that 6 Mile Woodward area against the trans community.
It has changed astronomically my community's view on law enforcement, interacting with law enforcement.
Our trans community, I think, is feeling a little more comfortable coming forward.
But then, just 6 months after the arrest, there's a development in the case that could undo all that progress.
Albert Weathers was granted a bond hearing.
When you're charged with murder, typically you are not granted bond.
But the judge in this instance sets Albert's bond at $100,000.
Only 10% has to be paid. So with $10,000, Albert's a free man.
I was angry. I was furious, to be honest. They literally just let a murderer go.
On bond after his arrest for the murder of Kelly Stowe.
During that hearing, the judge repeatedly asked the prosecutor what would be the harm in allowing him to be back on the streets until trial.
But the judge says Albert is a pastor, doesn't have any priors, and is not considered a flight risk.
Kelly was a victim in this case, and the defendant threw her out like she was trash and drove away and left her to die.
The prosecutor goes on to try to remind the judge that he waited an hour to figure out what story he was going to come up with to tell the police. The judge then says he understands all of that. But how is that a threat to other people?
I was pretty upset about it because the judge, in this case, stated on the record that they did not believe him to be a danger to the general community. So this was another instance of danger to the trans community not registering.
We were just all looking like, huh? Like another slap to the face, another like, y'all don't matter.
I was just angry. Oh my God, why he need to be out on bond? He may go and mess with somebody else.
This is not the first person that he got physical with, and I just feel like he's gonna do it again.
I'm next, is what I thought. Because I was the only person who came forward to identify him.
After making bond, Albert returns to his job as a security guard. And to his church.
He even officiated at a wedding.
It was crazy. It was more like manipulation.
I wanted to go to his church. I wanted to rally like a group of people together just to go to his church on one good Sunday, right? Because I wanted to know if his congregation really knew who was sitting behind that pulpit.
Albert spends the next 4 years out on bond awaiting trial.
With the COVID, the pandemic, everything got pushed back and pushed back and pushed back.
It really had everyone asking, is he ever going to be on trial?
I had to just say, okay, God, revenge is yours, because it's going to come to an end eventually.
Finally, in 2023, Albert's attorneys reached out to the prosecutors about a possible plea deal.
I feel that we had a good chance of, obviously, a conviction. And defendants, when they see an onslaught of evidence, they make decisions based on that.
I think we all know that Albert Weathers had a history of soliciting transgender prostitutes. He was already facing pretty serious allegations, and I don't think he wanted all of that out in the open.
The prosecution also worries that a jury might believe Albert's claims of self-defense.
It's the gay panic defense that they want everyone to buy into. It's always the gay panic defense.
A lot of it comes down to what you can prove. You don't know what a jury's gonna do.
It's possible he wouldn't serve any prison time at all.
In July of 2023, Albert pleads guilty to second-degree murder and a felony firearm charge.
The felony firearm is an additional charge that goes with the commission of a crime while using a firearm.
In exchange for his plea, the judge sentences Albert to 8 years for murder, with an additional 2 years for the firearm charge.
I was not surprised with the plea. He knew he was guilty. We knew he was guilty. They knew he was guilty. The judge knew, but that's not a sentence.
Of course, you hear murder, you want 20, 25 years, but the prosecutor, she was very good in explaining how that system worked. So once she broke it down and when it came back to what they said, I was okay with that.
For murder, too, for someone who has no prior criminal history, these numbers are actually within the realm of what they could get after a trial.
Everyone would have liked to see him serve more time, but I also think after so long, I think everyone was glad to see that justice was being served in some way.
I'm glad that finally this was an end and he admitted guilt.
The family does have a little bit of closure that Mr. Weathers is sitting down in prison, and hopefully he will understand why he's there.
And while that hardly makes up for the loss of Kelly's life, those that loved her are dedicated to ensuring that others don't suffer the same fate.
I didn't get a chance to save my friend. I'm an advocate in the community now.
What happened to Kelly and what has happened to so many other transgender women of color who find themselves in survival sex work is that they couldn't find work elsewhere. So the lesson for all of us is to just tear down these barriers.
Allies. Let's create businesses. Let's create opportunities. If we all sit at a table, right, we can build.
It's a fitting tribute to the woman who meant so much to Seven. It's Thursday morning in Cobb County, Georgia, a fast-growing community northwest of Atlanta that's home to more than 750,000 people.
Cobb County is the third largest county in the state of Georgia. It's known for just being a serene, suburban-type community. It's a great place to live.
People here like to say that Cobb County is close to Atlanta, but far away from the big city.
You get the best of both worlds.
Although plenty of people end up somewhere in between. At a little after 10 that morning, a Cobb County police cruiser pulls into a trailer park just south of Interstate 20.
People tend to think of a trailer park as something that's low class or have very negative connotations. But here in the South, and especially in a lot of rural areas, the trailer homes are just like one-story ranch-style homes.
The police pull up to the home of 36-year-old DeCarla Lomax.
Her family has not heard from her. They're pretty concerned.
People who loved DeCarla had been trying to reach her to no avail. So they called police to go out to her mobile home for a welfare check.
Walking up to the trailer, the officers don't immediately see any cause for concern.
There was no broken glass, there were no open doors, anything like that that would alarm them.
DeCarla, are you in there? Miss Lomax, are you in there?
When no one answers, the officers track down the property manager to unlock the door.
They go inside, announce themselves. This is police. Anybody here? Still no answer.
The officers look around the sparsely furnished living room.
It's so empty, it looks like no one really lives there.
But that doesn't mean no one's home.
Got a body.
As the officers enter the bedroom, they discover a body of a Black female laying on the floor.
Their face and head is completely covered with a jacket.
But her identity is all it conceals.
The jacket isn't covering up the fact that there's a pool of blood.
DeCarla Lomax had come to Atlanta in 2006 from the small town of Abbeville, South Carolina.
She was a hard worker, somebody who was always striving to better herself.
Moving to Atlanta, it's the land of opportunities, especially for young Black professionals.
However, DeCarla wasn't just looking to better herself. She was building a future for her family.
She was a single mother of 3. By 2011, her 2 older children had already left home, but she was still raising her 16-year-old son.
Being a single mother, raising a 16-year-old son has to be challenging.
Did you finish your homework?
Yes, Mom.
Are you sure?
Positive.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
How much do I involve myself in his life? How do I make sure that he's safe? Keep him on track with his grades. There are so many dynamics that go into raising a teenager.
Once you finish your breakfast, if you want me to give you a ride to school on my way to work, I can do that.
Okay.
And DeCarla was doing it while working full-time as a certified nursing assistant.
It takes a special nature, a special spirit and personality to be in healthcare. That is a person who really does have a compassionate heart.
DeCarla was a caregiver at heart, a nurturer at heart. She dedicated her entire life to helping other people.
DeCarla was also taking college classes to get her degree as a licensed practical nurse.
She was always looking for opportunities to better herself, and there's much more money to be an LPN.
Being able to work and go to school, that is a lot of responsibility, but that says a lot about her work ethic.
Still, for all her success as a nurse and a mother, DeCarla felt something was missing in her life.
It was natural progression to say, hey, I have my things in order. Let's see if I can get me a companion that I can share this with.
She found that companion in Deron Williams.
She found someone who not only she was attracted to, but someone who also loved her son.
Got a really great deal with it.
Oh, thank you.
It wasn't long before Deron moved in with DeCarla and her son.
Things were moving fast.
They quickly became a happy family.
And by 2011, DeCarla's career was on the fast track too.
DeCarla had recently graduated with her LPN.
Once she got her certificate to be an LPN, the world of opportunities just opened up for her.
DeCarla, Deron, and her teenage son are going to be able to afford a bigger house. They're going to be moving out of the trailer park.
But now police have found a woman lying on the floor of DeCarla's trailer in a pool of blood.
There's no pulse, no response, and it's clear that this person is deceased.
She had what we call impact wounds, blunt force wounds that caused severe damage.
She was hit so hard that her face was almost unrecognizable.
Is the dead woman DeCarla?
When the family requested a welfare check, they provided the police with a description.
She had a very distinct tattoo.
Georgia, to build a better life for herself and her teenage son.
DeCarla is a small-town girl from South Carolina who moves to the Atlanta, Georgia area for better opportunities.
While working as a nursing assistant, she took classes at a local college. She earned her certification as a licensed practical nurse.
She'd also found love with Deron Williams.
DeCarla found someone that she thought would complement her life.
Things were just looking great for her.
Police department, DeCarla, you in here?
But now police officers performing a welfare check
We got a body.
have found a woman's dead body on DeCarla's bedroom floor.
Go check for that tattoo.
Judging from the tattoo on the lower back, the body appears to be DeCarla's.
It also appears she had been beaten to death.
Go ahead and start major crime suspect, please.
She had massive blunt force trauma to her face and her head.
It's down this hallway.
When homicide detectives arrive on the scene, they search the trailer for a possible murder weapon.
With that type of massive blunt force trauma, it had to be something heavy.
Whatever was used had to be covered in blood.
However, there's no sign of it in the trailer.
They do see some tools laid out on the counter.
But there was nothing heavy enough to inflict the sort of injuries DeCarla suffered.
There's also no evidence of forced entry or any sort of struggle between DeCarla and her killer.
It looks like it might have just been a sudden strike that put DeCarla down.
Why the killer struck is more difficult to determine.
The police are not sure if it was a robbery gone wrong.
The trailer, it was almost empty. There was hardly any furniture in there.
It looked like someone had been there packing and moving.
So it's really hard to determine if anything was actually taken from the property.
However, the detectives have reason to suspect DeCarla knew her killer.
Not only was there no evidence of forced entry, when the first officers who arrived on scene found DeCarla, there was a jacket covering her face and head.
But when someone takes the time to cover up an assault, use an indicator that that person is known to the victim.
Excuse me, sir.
After wrapping things up inside, detectives start interviewing other residents in the trailer park.
Most of the neighbors weren't too familiar with DeCarla. Some would see her come and go, but they didn't get to know her that well.
We're investigating a homicide.
One neighbor does confirm that DeCarla was in the process of moving out.
Yeah, I've seen her around. She's been coming by for the last week or so, loading things up.
That explains why there was so little furniture and other belongings in the trailer.
When was the last time you saw her?
The neighbor says the last time he saw DeCarla was that morning.
That neighbor remembered DeCarla pulling in around 8:30.
She's getting out of her car, went inside. Huh. Was anyone with her? I hadn't seen anyone.
However, the neighbor's story leaves detectives with another question.
The car is no longer there at the trailer.
Do you see anyone leave? No. Next time I looked out was when the police came. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you, sir.
Assuming that the killer made off with DeCarla's car, detectives pay a visit to the trailer park's management office.
They asked the management office if there's any security footage.
As you can see right here, this shows the car coming into the property.
Reviewing the footage, detectives note that DeCarla arrived at the trailer park at 8:45 a.m.
And about 20 minutes later, they saw DeCarla's car coming back out of the trailer park.
And whoever was driving appeared to be in a hurry.
They could not ascertain from the video who exactly was driving, but they knew that it wasn't her.
By then, DeCarla was lying dead inside the trailer.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
But if it wasn't DeCarla, who was it? As detectives leave the management office, they're approached by another of DeCarla's neighbors.
Excuse me. Are you the ones asking about DeCarla?
Yes, ma'am.
The neighbor tells detectives that she's seen two different men at the trailer with DeCarla recently.
Well, she had a boyfriend that lived with her.
Do you know his name?
Duran Williams.
She would often see DeCarla with Duran around the trailer. But she did mention that she had seen DeCarla with another man.
The neighbor says the man's name is Raymond Harvey.
She also tells the police that she often saw DeCarla arguing with this man.
And so with this new information, police are thinking, is he possibly the killer?
Detectives investigating the murder of DeCarla Lomax have just learned that the 36-year-old nurse had recently been seen with a man named Raymond Harvey.
Raymond has also been reported by neighbors to have been arguing with DeCarla around the property multiple times.
Officers are now thinking that one of these arguments turned violent.
Based on the crime scene, detectives already suspect the killer was no stranger.
The fact that her body was covered with that jacket is indication that this person was known to DeCarla.
But who exactly is Raymond?
Protocol is always to run a background check.
He does have some criminal history. He had been arrested for fraud charges.
But there's nothing in his past to suggest he's capable of such a brutal murder.
He doesn't have any violent crimes on his record.
But they still want to talk to Raymond to get the nature of that relationship.
Detectives bring Raymond in for questioning and tell him exactly why he's there.
We found an adult black female deceased with obvious injuries.
He's listening to the officers. Very matter of fact.
He was non-emotional.
We have positively identified that person as DeCarla.
Is he just nonchalant? Or is he trying to play it cool because he already knows that she's dead?
When detectives ask how he knows DeCarla, Raymond says that he's her boyfriend.
He said that she had recently broken things off with her previous boyfriend, Duran Williams.
He also tells detectives that there was some overlap between his relationship and DeCarla's relationship with Duran.
And how did y'all meet?
She came to South Carolina on a business. She came to one of her cousin's house. So I was in her cousin's house.
When he saw her, he told the cousin immediately, hey, who's that? I like her. Can you hook me up?
Raymond says that's when he and DeCarla had begun a long-distance relationship. But she continued to see Duran, too.
When things were great with Duran, he would stay with her. And then when they weren't so great, she would call Raymond.
But he says that DeCarla eventually said she was tired of the back and forth.
She had told me on the phone, she said, look, she don't do a long-distance relationship, so I don't really want to be with her, and I'm to Atlanta.
Raymond says he'd moved to Atlanta to stay with DeCarla.
And this time, DeCarla told him that she and Duran had broken up for good.
But according to Raymond, Duran wasn't entirely out of the picture.
Fell off, because, cheating incident, moved back home.
Cheating with him?
Yeah, she was cheating with him.
Not that Raymond was entirely innocent either.
I was doing my thing, too.
DeCarla wasn't his only love interest.
But he and DeCarla had eventually drifted back together.
Only when he moved back into DeCarla's trailer, things got even more complicated.
Deron was actually there now, staying at the trailer.
DeCarla says that she's just helping him out.
He had gave them her address for his probation.
Raymond says he wasn't crazy about the arrangement, but DeCarla had told him not to worry.
She said he's not going to do nothing to say nothing to you because he knows he's on probation. He knows he's in trouble. He's gone for a while.
Still, Raymond said he didn't like having Deron around.
In fact, he says Deron is likely responsible for DeCarla's death.
Even before me, they were arguing and fighting. It was real bad.
He tells the police about how Deron had beaten her several times before, and one of those beatings actually landed her in the hospital.
I wasn't cut, physically, like punched her in the face or something, swole up.
Raymond says he'd grown so fed up with the situation that he'd given DeCarla an ultimatum.
He says it's either him or me.
Yeah, look, DeCarla, you finna have to choose. I don't see. Really, I'm done, bro.
Wait, don't go, please. I choose you. I choose you. I want you.
Really?
Yes, I want you.
DeCarla says, I want you, Raymond. I want you.
So Raymond and DeCarla decided to get their own place.
We had to move the majority of our things to the new residence.
Which explains why the trailer was so empty.
Raymond says that Deron had also moved out.
His mama, got him, several places to stay.
But did that mean he was entirely out of the picture this time?
DeCarla would often go back to the mobile home to pick up a few things.
There were nights where DeCarla stayed overnight just from packing late.
At least that's what she'd told Raymond.
The detectives asked Raymond if DeCarla might have still been seeing Deron.
Might have been up there, I don't know.
Raymond said they had had a conversation about this very fact.
But it's what he says next that makes detectives suspicious of Raymond.
She said that he never did come, but you know how to lie.
Raymond's responses during the interview were making detectives more than a little suspicious.
He was nonchalant about the whole situation.
But there is one thing Raymond says that really sticks out to detectives.
They asked Raymond if he thought DeCarla was still hooking up with her ex, Deron, behind his back.
That's when Raymond tells detectives, I don't know, but all women lie.
That says a lot about his trust of DeCarla and his overall thought process of how women are in general. So that is a major red flag to detectives.
Had he followed DeCarla to the trailer, hoping to catch them in the act?
Possibly that's the motive. That there was jealousy going on, there was a heated argument that turned violent.
Probing for his whereabouts around the time of the murder, detectives ask when he last saw DeCarla.
She stayed with me last night.
Raymond told detectives that DeCarla had left early in the morning.
She was supposed to take her son to school and then go by the mobile home to pick up a few things.
She's gonna be over there getting things situated for a while.
But when they ask if he'd gone to the trailer that morning, he says no.
Raymond's alibi is that he walked DeCarla's sister's kids to school that morning because they were staying with him at the time.
This is right back about place town.
Raymond told detectives he had texted her and called her and received no response.
He was wondering where she was.
It was at this point where Raymond began to demonstrate some behavior not consistent with his earlier attitude when officers told him that she was deceased.
At first, he was flat, he was robotic, and at the end of questioning, he became really emotional. He starts breaking down. He's like, I told her, but she didn't listen. Detectives didn't know what to make of that.
Is the reality that DeCarla is dead finally sinking in?
Or is it the beginnings of a confession?
He could be getting emotional because he's feeling guilty.
I'm gonna need your phone to check your call logs, please.
At the end of the interview, detectives ask to see Raymond's phone.
His statements in his call log was consistent. He had made several attempts to reach out and call her.
To investigate Raymond's claims further, detectives subpoena his phone records.
Since he made several texts and calls, there should be cell tower data that confirms exactly where he was.
Then, while waiting to hear back from Raymond's cell phone provider,
You can have a seat here.
detectives talk to DeCarla's 16-year-old son.
They reached out to DeCarla's brother, who picked him up from school, and asked him to bring the teenager into the station.
Thank you.
When he sits down with detectives, DeCarla's son confirms that his mother did drive him to school that morning.
And he tells them that he slept most of the way to school, but she did, in fact, drop him off at school.
His story was consistent with Raymond.
However, he does mention something that Raymond didn't know.
He remembers his mother saying on the ride to school that she was going to meet up with Duran a little bit later.
She said Duran needed a ride to the probation office.
Okay. All right.
He had a meeting that morning with his parole officer.
Considering how Raymond felt about Duran, it's no surprise that DeCarla did not tell him that she was meeting with Duran.
Sir, can you come in, please? I'm gonna ask your uncle some questions. You can sit.
She also neglected to mention it to her brother.
You can have a seat, please.
Since DeCarla's brother was already at the station, detectives interviewed him too.
Did she tell you anything about meeting up with him this morning?
DeCarla's brother is really surprised that DeCarla went to go see Duran without him.
Well, she knows she won't be around him. She usually brings me along with her because we already know how he is.
According to DeCarla's brother, how Duran is dangerous.
He tells the police that DeCarla and Duran had a very violent history, and they had made an agreement that anytime DeCarla was going to interact with Duran, that her brother needed to be there as well.
He says they'd made the agreement after Duran put DeCarla in the hospital.
Raymond had previously told detectives about Duran putting DeCarla in the hospital, but he hadn't known of any details.
However, her brother does.
DeCarla's brother actually witnessed the aftermath.
I took her to the emergency room. She investigated, told me what happened.
What Duran had done sounded awfully familiar to the detectives.
Duran actually hit her in the head with a hammer.
That the 36-year-old nurse had previously been the victim of a similar attack at the hands of her ex-boyfriend, Duran Williams.
He tells the police that the incident that landed DeCarla in the hospital was due to Duran hitting her in the head with a hammer.
When was that?
This was back in 2009 or 2008.
He didn't see her get hit with a hammer, but he came home, saw his sister in her room crying.
What the hell? DeCarla, what's going on?
And saw Duran sitting across from her.
He was sitting in a chair trying to, apologize and talk to her or something.
DeCarla's brother says he didn't know exactly what Duran had done until later, after he drove his sister to the emergency room.
She told me that she had come in there fussing with her, yelling and cussing, running back and forth.
Where you was at last night?
What are you talking about?
How you gonna go out with Raymond and we doing what we doing?
So he left out the room the second time. And when he came back in the room running out. He hit her on the head with a hammer.
Her brother suspects that maybe something similar happened in this instance as well.
Her being hit in the head with a hammer. In previous offenses, makes him think Duran could be the one who did the same thing twice.
Thank you for your time. I'll see you out.
After talking with DeCarla's brother, detectives pulled Duran's criminal history and confirmed that he'd been charged for the attack that put DeCarla in the hospital.
They find that he's actually on probation for the assault charge.
He did plead guilty to assaulting her with a hammer.
Despite that, DeCarla hadn't made a clean break with Duran.
She let him stay at the trailer while he was on probation for the assault that put her in the hospital.
I can imagine him saying, well, if you wouldn't have made me so mad, then I wouldn't have caught this charge. And so she's feeling guilty.
Based on what detectives have learned, Duran becomes the focus of the investigation.
Police contact his parole officer in an effort to locate him.
The parole officer confirmed what DeCarla's son told them, that he was supposed to meet with Duran on the morning of the murder.
But Duran had missed the meeting.
The probation office also tells detectives that it is DeCarla who usually brings him there.
Between the parole officer, DeCarla's son, and her brother, the detectives are able to give DeCarla's parents a better picture of what happened when they arrive at the station later that day.
They have driven all the way to Cobb County upon hearing the news.
Apparently, she still had some association with Duran. Something about he was supposed to go to a probation office this morning, and DeCarla was going to take him. We don't know what the reason is behind it, other than there was an argument probably. But I know that it was a violent death.
Her parents, of course, were devastated, but they weren't really surprised. They had warned her on numerous occasions.
You know, anytime a person hits you, you know, it's time to walk away.
But love doesn't work that way. Sometimes people stay. They stay too long.
And now there was only one thing left to do.
We're going to work and work and work and work and try to bring some justice to it.
We're so sorry for your loss. And thank you for coming in. I'll see you all out.
For the investigators, the path to justice starts with locating Duran Williams.
They put out at all points bulletin for him to be located.
Detectives also issue a be on the lookout alert for DeCarla's car.
Based on surveillance video from the trailer park, detectives determined that Duran fled in DeCarla's car.
The bolo quickly gets results.
Atlanta PD contacts the detectives to let them know that they've located DeCarla's car.
It had been abandoned. The wheels were stolen and there was no sign of Duran.
There was no indication a crime had occurred in the vehicle. They had no murder weapon.
Their best chance of locating Duran turns out to be a bust.
Detectives are preparing for a manhunt because they don't know where Duran is.
However, the search for Duran will soon be cut short.
Homicide.
Then out of the blue, they hear from Duran's sister.
Duran's sister tells the investigators that she's heard something very disturbing.
I got a call from my mother who was hysterical.
According to the sister, she had very good reason to be.
She said that my brother had accidentally killed his girlfriend.
Has reached out to detectives investigating DeCarla Lomax's murder with some crucial information.
She says that Duran called their mother to tell their mother that he thinks he killed his girlfriend.
So I called his cell phone and he answered the phone. He was crying. He was hysterical. He says, I accidentally killed her. I killed her.
He tells her that he did kill DeCarla, but he doesn't know what happened.
They had a very tumultuous relationship.
His sister claims that they've been calling the police on each other for years.
He's gone to jail before for, I guess domestic violence with her. It's just been a complete mess.
And then, according to Duran's sister, he was holed up in an Atlanta hotel trying to figure out what to do.
The sister feels that it's best to contact the police.
Deron's sister was able to provide the location of the hotel where Deron was staying.
Thank you.
As soon as detectives are off the phone with Deron's sister, law enforcement descends on the hotel.
Thankfully, Deron surrenders without further incident.
Then, once he's back at the station, detectives sit him down for questioning.
When they let him know that he was under arrest for murdering DeCarla, he became quite emotional.
We identified positively DeCarla Lomax as being deceased. I know, son. I know.
He's distraught, and they're having a hard time calming him down.
You all right?
That display of emotion led detectives to believe that he was feeling guilty and would cooperate.
This is your opportunity to provide us with your side of what happened.
But Deron is unable to give them a straight answer.
I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened.
Detectives want to know why then he caught his mom crying.
If I remember right, what you told her was that you thought you accidentally killed your girlfriend.
That's when Deron decides to lawyer up.
My mom's hoping I can talk to her.
Well, I understand why your mama would say that. And we've been through your rights. If you don't want to talk to me, then that's your right.
She just told me to do it with my lawyer.
So the police have to shut that interview down.
But detectives won't need a confession to charge Deron with murder.
They want to triangulate where that cell phone was.
His phone records show that Deron was in the vicinity of the trailer park the morning of the murder, right around the time of 8:45.
When Deron goes on trial on November 5th, 2012, the prosecutors say there's a simple explanation for why his phone was pinging off a tower near the trailer.
Prosecutors told the jury that DeCarla picked up Deron that morning to take him to his probation meeting, but they made a stop at the mobile home.
They stopped off at the trailer, and at some point, an argument ensued.
The prosecutors weren't sure exactly what the argument was about.
They only know what happened next.
He lost it. He lost his cool.
He picked up the hammer and murdered DeCarla.
Because unlike the previous attack, he hit her more than once.
This definitely was a fit of rage from Deron.
It wasn't until after multiple blows from the hammer that Deron realized DeCarla was dead.
I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
After the murder, he covered her face with a jacket.
Then he got in DeCarla's car and drove away, taking the hammer with him.
Somewhere he ditched that hammer.
It was never found.
When it's the defense's turn, Deron decides it's finally time to tell his side of the story.
Deron takes the stand, which is something you hardly ever see murder defendants do.
In his testimony, he doesn't deny much of what the prosecutors claim.
He tells the jury that DeCarla did, in fact, pick him up to take him to his probation meeting.
They stop at the trailer to do some last-minute packing. And in the process, they got into an argument.
But Deron claims that DeCarla started it.
Deron said the argument started because DeCarla accused him of texting another woman.
Who is she? Just don't worry about it.
Deron says he tried to explain, but DeCarla wouldn't listen.
He states that she actually came at him.
Just stop.
Who is she?
It's nobody.
He picked up the hammer to swing at her just to get her off of him.
Who is she? It's nobody.
He was defending himself.
That's what Duran claims. But the jury sees it differently.
The jury sides with the prosecution and they find Duran guilty.
He was sentenced to life with no possibility of parole.
To those who love DeCarla, the punishment is tragically too late.
The initial 2008 charge where he had hit her with a hammer, he received no jail time. He was on probation for that assault when he killed her.
If Duran had been behind bars, DeCarla would still be alive.
Having DeCarla taken away from this world in such a violent way was a huge loss. She was caring, she committed.
Một ngày thi đấu tốt của thủ môn rất đơn giản.
Bruno Fernandes.
Anh ấy đang quan sát và chuẩn bị thực hiện pha tạt bóng. Đó là pha cản phá xuất sắc của thủ môn. Vinicius Junior. Bao giờ họ tổ chức tình huống, đó là cú sút. Một pha lập công hoàn hảo, điểm 10 cho chất lượng.
Họ đã chơi tập trung phòng ngự và ngay sau khi có bóng thì cao thủ đã luân chuyển vô cùng nhanh chóng và bàn thắng đã tới.
Khoảng cách rất lớn về mặt tỷ số. Rodrigo. Đó là tình huống phản công. Cơ hội đã trôi qua với pha cản phá vừa rồi của thủ môn. Pha phạt góc đang được các cầu thủ dàn xếp rất kỹ lưỡng. Martinelli đang đưa bóng về phía trước.
Đó là tình huống phạt lỗi của
Anh ấy cố gắng tiếp tục trận đấu bằng pha đá phạt nhanh. 45 phút đầu tiên đã kết thúc với sự áp đảo cho đội bóng dẫn trước. Vâng, đó là một hiệp đấu thiếu cân sức đã diễn ra trong hiệp 1 và chúng ta cùng chờ xem những thay đổi nào sẽ diễn ra trong hiệp thi đấu thứ hai. Rodrigo.
Jude Bellingham.
Một tình huống dứt điểm và ghi bàn vô cùng hoàn hảo. Huấn luyện viên lúc này chắc hẳn đang rất tức giận với sai lầm ngớ ngẩn vừa rồi của thủ môn. Họ đang dẫn trước với khoảng cách khá xa.
Casemiro.
Anh ấy đã đuổi theo để giành lại quả bóng vừa rồi trong chân đối thủ.